it's a joy to be on the county's board. I was brought up in Thundersley Gospel Hall, so I'm very familiar with the brethren. They gave me particularly my love of the word, which is something. I read the Bible every day because my mother read the Bible every day with me, and I loved being part of that church and youth group. I brought my friends in. They all joined the youth group. We used to have this clubhouse in a chicken shed. In my grandma, it was a deserted chicken shed. The chickens had been removed. We used to run, I used to call it the Our Faith Club, because although we went to, and some of you will be familiar with this, we went to Covenanters in the morning, then the breaking of bread. Then we came home, then we had lunch. Then I ran the chicken shed club church with my friends in the afternoon. Then I went back to church in the evening, and then we had the after fellowship. And I thought that was regular church attendance. Things have changed. So that's like where my roots are. And then I've ended up on a really interesting journey through Youth for Christ, Youth of the Mission. As Peter said, I ended up in the middle of the Church of England as their national lead in mission and evangelism. And I had to pinch myself at that one. I remember going to the interview and they said to me, "Can you do change?" I was like, yeah. They said, "Can you get people to change or do something that they don't want to do? And can you give us an example?" And you're sitting in an interview and you're like, oh no. And so the first thing that came into my head, I said, oh yes. I said, I got all my friends to swim in a cold and muddy river in Norfolk. And when they said they couldn't because they didn't have any swimming costumes, I said it wouldn't be a problem. I had a roll of bin bags. I proceeded to make them all swimming costumes out of bin bags, and then we went swimming in the river. I remember walking out of that interview thinking, I don't think the Church of England is going to employ the woman who makes people swim in bin bags. They did. So anyway, don't worry. I'm sure there is a cold, muddy river here, but I don't have any bin bags, so you're pretty safe. Great. What is our topic today? And it's about, is there hope for the next generation? And I could just say yes and sit down, but that would be a little bit boring. So I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to explain why I think there is just so much hope for the next generation. I lead a charity called Hope Together, and we just long for everyone everywhere to know Jesus. I guess my sister said to me the other day, I think you're just doing what you did when you were young, but a bit more grown up. I said yes. So I'm still passionate that the people that I know and meet would meet Jesus. It's just that it's got a bit more of a flashy title and some branding. I've actually come to you from Wild Hope, and I feel like I could have done this talk probably in a more relevant way for the next generation by chucking them all in their minibuses and cars. They're about an hour away in Blackwood, which is about 45 minutes out of Cardiff, just over the border in Wales. And we're running a Wild Hope mission for young adults. And it's for people, young adults, passionate about evangelism. And if I could have just bottled them and brought them here, again, you'd know there was some hope for the next generation. And we're cross-denomination. So we've got this amazing couple from the fastest growing church in the UK, which is the Redeemed Christian Church of God. It's a big black majority church. And if you go to their prayer meetings, I've been to their prayer meetings, they pray through the night and everybody's there. I mean, everybody's there. The whole family is there. And I went and I was sort of helping with this prayer meeting. And there's 40,000 of them at the prayer meeting. Okay. So there's 40,000 of them praying in the Excel through the night. And I'm there. And they're like, do you want to lead some prayers? So I lead some prayers. And then they said to me, what's the prayer meeting like in your church, the Church of England? I'm like, well, it's not quite like this. I mean, we're trying. I have to say, back in our church, it's taken off. My husband is a lark, I'm an owl. So he started a 6:00 prayer meeting. This is why there's hope for the next generation. He started a 6:00 in the morning prayer meeting, and it is our 20-something guys that are rocking up Monday to Friday, 6:00, to pray for an hour. Then on Tuesday, Wednesdays, it's followed by another hour of prayer, which is more prayer for the area and prayer for mission. That's something different, isn't it? And I'm like, oh, what's going on there? And they're really keen, and they come at 6:00, and they don't want to miss it. and they're 20-something guys. And there's something happening, particularly amongst the young men in this generation, that God has, like God's just decided to do something. He's just decided to do something. It's not due to technique. It might be more due to the prayer meetings that were happening at the Excel, because they've really prayed. They pray for the nation they're in. This is their home, and they really pray. So the Wild Hope team, I was out with them in Cardiff yesterday. So we went out on the streets. There's about 30 young adults. And my word, were they worshipping the Lord in the middle of Cardiff. And then we just were talking to everybody. And then last night, we couldn't stop them with the testimonies of the people that they had spoken to on the streets in Cardiff. It just went on and on. We were trying to have an early night, and that began to just go out because everyone's a bit tired. It just began to go out of the window as young adult after young adult wanted to jump up and tell who they'd spoken to and how the Lord had used them. I was like, this is amazing. This is so exciting. Who did I talk to? I spoke to a young girl because we were worshipping. She and her friend had come nearby, and she said, I said, oh, hello, da-da-da. And she said, oh, well, I'm not really Christian, but I do some singing in a choir. So I was like, oh, great, well, what song? Well, we do sing some Christian songs. So I was like, oh, great. And she said, I know one, maybe you might know, because I said, we could maybe sing one that you know. She said, our God is an awesome God. I was like, oh, yeah, we know that one, just one moment. Rob, can you do it? Then I go over there, and then he started playing Our God is a Great Big God. That classic moment, and the girl's looking at me like, hold on a moment. No, awesome. Oh, awesome God. Anyway, so then this girl sings with us that song. And then I had a conversation with her. Her foster mother is a Christian. And you can just see what Jesus is doing in her life. And she sang that song with us. And she took away John's gospel. How exciting. So that was number one. The other person I spoke to was a young woman of Asian background. She was Hindu. We had a cracking chat, all about her faith, all about my faith. And then at one point I said, is all your family Hindu? She said, yes. And then she looked me straight in the eye and she said, but we are allowed to believe whatever we want to. And then asked me again why Jesus died. Got to be amazing, hasn't it? Just got to be amazing. And that's just me. And that was multiplied by all these young adults out having just extraordinary conversations with people on the street in Cardiff. And that was yesterday. So, what I think has happened is Bible tables. I am going to get to the notes maybe in the PowerPoint eventually. I know that people look at the PowerPoint wondering, where has she gone? But anyway, Bible tables. So with me in Wild Hope is this great young guy, Angus, who's come to help us in our church with evangelism. And he was like, I found this great new method of evangelism. Great, tell me about it. I've got a camping table. And I've got some Bibles. Any of you seen anything like that before? Ever in your lives? Camping table with Bibles. Doesn't sound that radical, does it really? Literally, that is his great technique for evangelism. And what's happened is some of the things we did, some of you go, yeah, I did that. 20, 30 years ago, I stood out there with a table and everyone walked past thinking, But it's not a new technique, it's just that God's on the move. And the first time he did this, obediently with his friend rocked up, he went out to Trafalgar Square, they put the money in each, they bought 200 Bibles, they got on the tube, they took out their camping table, they put it up in Trafalgar Square, and they were losing one every minute, if that. People were just over there, grabbing the Bibles, talking to them, praying with them. He was like, I've never seen anything like it. And he said, just a nudge inside that this would be a good idea. And you and I are like, we've done that years ago. Nobody came near us. So it's not to do with a new technique. Is there hope for the next generation? Yes. Because God has decided in his great wisdom that he's going to reach them and he's going to use us. And it's just staggering. So I am going to go to a verse. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 9. I just love these verses. I turn to them over and over again. But we are going to have a look at them. Starting at verse 35. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and illness. And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is..." What's the issue, people? The labourers are... Is Jesus right? Great, always. But you know what? You might have stopped believing that he was right just a little bit on this verse for a while. You know, if I ask you about where you are, is the harvest plentiful? I mean, to be fair, we did some research in 2022 called Talking Jesus. We're going to have a little bit of that. We're going to have a little bit of some other research. And when I first started talking on it, we did it originally in 2015, then we did it again in 2022. I'd go along to somewhere and I'd say, "How's the harvest where you are?" And people look at me and go, "Oh, well, where we are is particularly hard. It's particularly difficult ground here, Rachel. It may be absolutely fine in Trafalgar Square, but where we live and in the streets where we are, it's a little bit hard." And I go, "Right, okay, let's have a look at what Jesus has to say about the harvest." And then we'd read those words and we'd go, "Oh, that's interesting. Jesus seems to think the harvest is plentiful. There seems to be a mismatch here. What's happening?" And it's like, actually though, as I've begun now, I'm still travelling a lot and speaking. That was 22, and we're going to show you just a couple of slides from there in a minute. Now when I'm travelling, people are beginning to go, "Well, actually," and I don't know what you're seeing in your church, but do you know, interestingly, actually where I am, actually, we have had somebody come to faith in the last year or two. Do you know what? There was someone who came to church the other Sunday. Do you know what? Somebody did pick up and ask for a Bible. And I'm beginning to hit this rumour. I went down to, absolutely love it, Baptist Church. It's in Shoreham. It's a small seaside town. And I went there and I said, "Yeah, well, I'll come if you can get some other churches together." So they got some churches together. They packed out Shoreham Baptist Church and I went to speak about Talking Jesus. And then when I get there, they didn't really need me because they're like, "Well, actually, 7 people have come to faith in the last few months." They were all over the age of 55. That was really interesting to me. I said, "Well, how did that happen?" "We started a community choir." We got a community choir, and 7 people from the community choir had joined their church and been baptised in the last year. I'm like, great. Really, I could go home. Don't really need me. Isn't that exciting? 7 people. And they were like, well, how am I saying that? Because it wasn't Trafalgar Square. It was just a really normal church. Really, really normal church. And something's happening. There's just something happening. I'm going to slip to slide 4. So we're going to have a little look at some stats. So I've mentioned Talking Jesus. That was a big research project in 22. And then how many of you have heard about the Quiet Revival? Do put your hand up if you heard about the Quiet Revival, just so I know. Okay. Some of you haven't, so I will carry on. And then the Quiet Revival was done by the Bible Society, and it came out February this year. And it shows that in 2022, 11%, we know from Talking Jesus, 11% of the population would be regular church attenders. Not all ultimately really, really active, but 11% attenders. And in 2025, that is 12%. So it's a 1% increase in 3 years. But interestingly, it's also a 1% increase in active and practicing Christians. And we measure these by people who regularly go to church. And you know my little joke at the first, regulars now once a month. It's a little disappointing from the standards we were brought up with, but there you are. So regulars now once a month, but actually I can tell you from the stats, a lot of those people do go weekly. And it's also people who read their Bible at least weekly and who pray. It was the reading the Bible that slashes the stats. So 12% of the population regularly attend church, but only, it's now 7% of the population. So again, we've gone up since 2022 by 1% of the population who are also regularly attending church, regularly reading their Bibles, regularly praying. And you might go, 1%, Rachel? Really, I don't know why we're all calling that a quiet revival. But 1% is a solid increase in many, many churches of 1 or 2 people. Why I find this so interesting is we're over in Wales. And obviously, land of revival, also where my grandmother came from. They were touched by the Welsh revival. I've been outside the house where they have prayer meetings. It's all very exciting. Anyway, that's another story. Park that one, Rachel. But we often imagine that revival means that we will see like 500 people rock up to church on Sunday. And unless that happens, it's not happening. What I'm finding really interesting in what I think is the beginnings of a real move of God is it's 2 or 3 people all over the place. Does that make sense? So it's adding just 1% to the size of the church at the moment. But if that carries on, it is actually a decided shift from where we were headed, which was in the other direction, if we're honest. So it's a decided shift in the correct direction, and it's happening not in one place. We're not all jumping in our car and desperately trying to get to wherever it is that revival has fallen. It's happening in many, many places in beautiful small ways, like a community choir in Shoreham. Now that really gives me hope for the next generation. Because it's not dependent on being in one place at one time where you get to the revival meeting, even though they've had an incredible influence on my great-grandparents. It's all of us. All of us are being invited to help bring in this harvest. Every single one of us is being invited in to help with this harvest. And every single one of our churches is being invited in to help with this harvest. Now, that is exciting, isn't it? Let's have a look at the next slide. So, other things we know. In 2022, when we did Talking Jesus, we discovered that 47% of those aged 18 to 24, when they'd had a chat with someone who was a Christian, wanted to know more about Jesus. And that's if you look at the whole population, it's about 1 in 3. But when you go into the young adults, it's almost 1 in 2. It's almost 1 in 2 when you look at the young adults, and that was 22. So you're beginning to see that we were predicting a hunger in a particular hunger in that generation. And lots of what is happening is in that generation. So we could see that there was a hunger. But I love this slide. And I love the 1 in 3 of all the population, because it means when you go out or you have a Bible table, or one church I went and did a weekend away, and then the pastor said, great then, we're going round the doors. Anyone here done door? When did you last do door-to-door? Some of you might have done it recently with all the excitement that's going on. He said, great then, we're going to do all the doors in our community and we're going to ask them to Easter church. I didn't even know this was happening. What happened was I met someone there who's joining my board as a treasurer. Woo, what a win. And she and I are having coffee, and she said, oh, you might want to know what happened to the church after you did the church weekend away. I said, oh, yeah, what happened? She said, well, Jason, he's the pastor. He stuck up a big map in the hall of the church, and then he wrote all the slots of where he was going to do door-to-door, and he put blanks and said, could everybody please say when they're going to come with me? And she said, I'm really not an evangelist. She's a great accountant. I'm utterly thrilled for accountants. We really needed one in our board. So praise Jesus for accountants. But in all honesty, I'm as bad an accountant maybe as she would probably feel she was, evangelist, the gifts of the church. But she said, because you spoke, I thought, well, I probably should give this a go. So she said, I went and signed my name up to do door-to-door. And with fear and trembling, I went out with Jason. And she said, it was amazing. She said it was amazing. Because people were so thrilled that the local church had turned up on the doorstep. That church is a kind of, it was a brethren church. I could tell even by the building shape. You know, you walk in and you go, oh, yeah, I think this has got brethren roots. Something to do with the building shape. And is there a faded place where there was a verse on the wall with gold italics? Anyway, so I had a hunch, and that's what that church is. And they went and they did all their doors, and they had an amazing response. People were thrilled the local church had turned up to say hello. Isn't that exciting? Great. The next slide. Let's have a little look at this. So 12% of adults, this is Quiet Revival, in England and Wales are attending church monthly. Oh, look at this one. 21% of men aged 18 to 24 are regular churchgoers. And you're all looking at me, and we're all looking at that, and go, huh? I mean, when did that ever happen? Not being funny. It's a really we weren't expecting that. No one was. So we did Talking Jesus in 2022, and we weren't predicting that the big growth would be 18 to 24-year-old men. Whoever thought that was going to happen? But if you are an 18 to 24-year-old guy, I want to say to you, now is your opportunity and moment, because your generation are ridiculously open, and you have an opportunity to reach your friends in a moment that I don't know when it's going to come again. So now is that moment, and you need to get together and work out what to do. I don't know what you need to do, but you'll know what to do. And we need to back them. I don't know, invite all your friends on a camping retreat that's also going to be spiritual. But this is the age bracket where the biggest growth is happening right now. So then I was, and it's 33 of all the adult churchgoers are aged 18 to 34 in the UK. How exciting is that? It's a little bit bonkers. Now you're like, are you sure this is right? Are any of you just wondering? I mean, did we just go and talk to 18 and 24-year-old boys? Is that the only people? But this survey is enormous. So the Bible Society's survey was 13,000 people in England and Wales, done by YouGov. It's huge. It's just an utterly enormous, weighted survey. It's so big that you would really struggle to argue with it. And so all of us, everyone was a bit like, what? What on earth is God doing? It's exciting though, isn't it? So that's happening. There is a real growth in that age bracket. If we look at the next slide, we can see also even more openness. So 1 in 3 of the people who are currently not part of a church would go to church if you asked them. Do you want to take those odds with me? Who's up for taking a 1 in 3 shot? So find 3 people, ask them, and one of them's going to say yes. I'll do that. Take those odds. Pretty good. Amazing, really, actually. Just ask them, and because they have said they want to come, so we just have to find them and invite them. 1 in 4 of the people not currently in church would open a Bible. They're actually really interested in the Bible. There's been enormous growth in interest in the Bible, hence all the Bibles disappearing. There's a student church in Loughborough, and they couldn't quite work out where all their Bibles were going. So they had a stack of Bibles that they gave to people at the back of church if they didn't have a Bible. And then they're like, where have all the Bibles gone? Has anyone nicked the Bibles? We have to keep on buying new Bibles. What's going on? And then somebody said, oh, no, what's happening is students who aren't part of the church, because it's on the campus, are coming in when we have church, asking for a Bible, and then not coming to church, they're walking away with the Bible. And then when they've read the Bible, they're returning to church. Or we better get some more Bibles. Good response. But literally, the Bibles are going out of the door with students who have decided they want to find out if this is true. And that is just this incredible hunger. And I love this. 2 in 3 would appreciate prayer. Who can you pray for? Who can you just offer prayer for? So yesterday, obviously, we're all out in the street, and we could just say, I could just say, would you like me to pray for you? So we were doing loads of praying for people on the street yesterday. Whatever their need is, whatever it is that they want, let's just pray for them and see what God can do. Let's see what God can do when he rocks up. And you love it, don't you? We were... it takes me sometimes, how many of you does it take an age to get out of church? I'm one of those people. It just takes me forever to get out of church. And part of the problem is, most people leave the church, but other people start to come into our church when other people have left. Like when we're not there, they particularly like to come in, and that's the people who aren't Christians. So they like to come and visit. We've got a bit of a beautiful building. So they come rocking in when everyone else has gone. So if you don't get out in a gap, you end up talking to all the people who just walk in. So we'd prayed for one woman who'd come that Sunday with some really deep things going on. And I had this woman from the prayer. So I said, why don't we talk? I'm going to go and talk to that woman who's just come in. And then I'm praying for her. And then she's just crying. And you have to explain to her, why am I crying? And that's just when God touches you. That's why you're crying. Here we are. We have Gospels. Can I give you one of our Gospel of Mark to read? You need to read about Jesus. He's the person who's touching you and changing and transforming your life right now. It's amazing. You can never get out of church, let alone to get out the front to then we do on the street stuff. So the Bible table's out there. And the other Sunday, I was I was doing pastoral stuff because I'm married to the pastor. And so I was like, I couldn't get to the Bible table. And then I got to the Bible table, but I was like, they were packing up. And I'm like, boys, don't pack up. Please don't pack up. I just want to be out here just for a few minutes. Oh, okay, Rachel. And they said, it's just been a really slow day. Do you know what? Some days are just really slow days. No one seems that interested, you know? They were like, it's a slow day. I'm like, yeah, but I just want to be out here for a little bit. Okay. We'll stay with you. So there I am, and I'm handing out, we have little digital gospel flyers as well. So I stopped this guy, I chat to him. He said, I'm quite interested. I said, you could come to church at 5 o'clock. Oh, right, okay. And then I said, actually, now go and talk to this person. Eventually talked to 3 of us, came back to the 5 o'clock service, gave his life to Jesus. Isn't that exciting? I also love the fact that he perfectly fits the statistics. So that's nice. But it's utterly amazing. And the other really exciting thing is we thought we were going to lose him and he's from Australia. He was going to have to go back to Australia, but he's just got a job. Thank you, Jesus, so he can stay in our church. And he's at everything. He's in, that stage. It's really exciting, everything. And he bounded up to me the following week and he said, Rachel, I just want to thank you for stopping me on the street. I just want to thank you for stopping me on the street. Do you know how close I was to not going out that day? Do you know how close the Bible table was to being folded up and put away? Do you know how close he was just to walking past and going on with his life as was? But when God moves, it's amazing, isn't it? And when God calls somebody and they have a divine encounter, it's just one of those moments. So, I would like to encourage us all that we can help in this harvest of the next generation. 1 in 3 would love to go to church invited. 1 in 4 would open a Bible. 2 in 3 would appreciate prayer. Okay, we're going to have a few more stats. Okay, the absolute latest stats. Next slide, slide 8. Probably too small for you to see, but I'll explain it anyway. So, we did a report in 2020 called Talking Toddlers, and we redid it. Was it last week or the week before? We did our first launch of the stats. Very nearby. So you're very near, you're one of the first groups to see this slide. And in 2019, there we are. In 2019, 11% of the parents in the UK with a child under the age of 5 were practicing Christians, and we had a 63% reach of fringe parents who currently aren't practicing Christians. This has gone up, and in 2025, it's a 67% reach into fringe parents, and only 20% of all the parents with children under the age of 5 aren't in touch with the church. And of that 20%, I show you the slide, there's a whole group of them who'd love an invite. Anyone got anything to do with parent and toddler groups? Anyone run a parent and toddler group here? You work in a nursery. Christian nurseries, like a parent and toddler group. So now I'm often saying to people, where should we start? Run a parent and toddler group. I know you're like, I did that. Some of you are going, I did that for years. I put the toys out. I cleaned it all up. I put them all away. I've served orange squash and I gave everybody a custard cream. But it's one of the biggest tools because this group is particularly open. They're particularly open. They've had a big life transition and they are wondering how to bring this baby up. And they come along to church and they come along to the toddler group and they actually come along because they want a whole pile of things for their children. Let's have a look at the next slide. I've pulled out a few of them. The biggest one was values. They wanted values, good values for their child. But I pulled out these because I think they're really interesting. That an awareness of God has gone up to 23% of these parents. They want an awareness of God for their child. Familiarity with church. Who would even think that that would have gone up? 23% want a familiarity with church for their children. 22% is the children friends going. But I wanted some Christian knowledge for my children has gone up to 18%. So this sense of wanting something Christian is growing in that age bracket with their children. And at the bottom, I love this one, more of them are saying it's their church. That sense of belonging and association. So I'm discussing this with the researcher who's not a Christian, who's helped me do all the stats. And he's like, that's really interesting. He said, did you ever read the La 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 La? I'm like, no. It was a sociological report that said what they call association was breaking down. And it has been actually, generation upon generation, a sense of belonging to something like wider than yourself. So that would include, I belong to a club, or I belong to a political party. People just were not wanting association because the religion of the day is secular individualism. Secular individuals do not belong to anyone but themselves. And all of their decision-making is internal. So the radar and compass for life is an internal radar and compass. And so this is really interesting that we're bucking the trend on a sense of people wanting to be associated. And so he picked it up as a really interesting slide. Next slide. We also discovered that 62% of all of those parents wanted a basic knowledge of Bible studies for their children. They think that is important for their kids. Anyone any good at telling Noah's Ark? Is that not exciting? There's a whole pile of parents out there who want you, because you know the Bible. I know you do. They want you to help them to bring their children up with an awareness of God and some Bible stories. That's what they're looking for. Can we do it? And I know it means getting some plastic toys and putting them out on every Wednesday morning, and it's really annoying. Or whenever it's going to be. Or it might be Sunday morning that you need to switch and have 2 services, and you need to have something like a bubble church first. So that's a church that's really kiddie friendly, and that's your early morning service, and then you switch to your normal service. But they'll come. Honestly, you put it on, they'll come. That by Sunday, they're a bit at their wits' end anyway, what to do with them. So you put on some great entertainment, they'll be there. But actually, it's not just the great entertainment. They genuinely want help. And there is this we're going through like a cultural reverse. We went all the way down here culturally, and people are pulling back. They're like, we've gone too far. I don't want my child to go down there. I'm beginning to see the danger of the mobile phone. I don't know who's going to help me. We're finding with another young guy who got baptized recently, he just said, I've discovered a framework for life that I never had. You know, what I'd been given it was a disaster. The individual, secular individualism is making people harassed and helpless. We have a pandemic of isolation, loneliness, anxiety, depression. This is impacting that younger generation in a way that we cannot even begin to unpack. It's enormous because they have no framework for life. Can you imagine if your only compass for all your decisions is you? The weight of you having to make every decision and get it right. Not only that, then display how successful your life is on Instagram or TikTok and hope that everyone else thinks your life is that brilliant. And the weight of making all those decisions and having a framework that you are deciding yourself is actually breaking people. It's breaking people. And then we've got the problem of pornography. We've been trying to tackle that in our church. It's rife because of the power of the mobile phone. It's so dangerous. And that's distorting. Another huge distortion. So actually, the bar for following Jesus is ridiculously high. But we've discovered, we've got a growth of young guys going, yes, I'll come to a 6:00 prayer meeting. Yes, I'll hand in my mobile phone. Tell me, I want freedom from pornography. How do I get that? Because only Jesus is going to give that to them. Only Jesus. So, the next slide shows us students. 33% of students said that they would be interested to read the Bible with a friend. 33%. Should we start with them? Should we start with 33%? It's not bad, is it? We could start reading the Bible with 33% of the students, couldn't we? And empowering them to read it with their friends. And next slide down, 37% of all 18 to 24-year-olds were interested in finding out more about the Bible. Any of you got any Bible knowledge? We have to stop keeping it to ourselves. That's that gorgeous passage in Kings where there's been the people of Israel have been locked in a siege. Do you remember that passage? I can't remember the other. They've been locked in a siege and they're dying. And God comes and rescues them and actually takes away the enemy. So the whole enemy camp has been disarrayed because God has sent the angel armies to deal with them. But nobody in the city knows. So they're all still starving. And then the lepers who were outside, they say, well, we can either starve here or we could go down and see, even if we're taken into captivity, we might survive if we go over to the Assyrians. So they potter off to go and try their luck there. And they discover all of the army is gone. They eat as much as they can. They're like picking up all the gold and the loot. And then they go, what are we doing? What are we doing? There's a starving city over there. A starving city. I think we better go and tell them. We are like the people who are eating all the food and stuffing all the gold in our pockets. There's a whole generation in particular who are starving. They're harassed and helpless, and I tell you, they're really hungry. And we get the opportunity to help them. We get the opportunity to, I don't mind what you do. I've got no real techniques. I can recommend a Bible table. I can recommend door-to-door and mother and toddlers. None of that. So I'm not here with some great technique. What they really want, though, is authentic people to walk with them, to deal with the real issues. Our issue in our church is we don't have enough people to mentor the people coming to faith. We don't have them. There aren't enough people to read the Bible with people. At YWAM, we're doing for us a Bible survey on the streets, just asking young adults, and I popped a last question in, would you like to read the Bible with someone? And people kept saying yes, but there was no one to read the Bible with them. So we had to stop doing the survey. No one's got the time, we're a bit busy. I've joined a golf club. Busyness is probably the thing that's killing our mission more than anything else. We are all busy people. I guarantee that you are busy. But we have to decide what our priority is. Are we going to share what Jesus has given us, or are we keeping it for ourselves? Because we're all going to stand there one day before the Lord, and he's going to ask what we did with our treasures. Did we stuff them in our pockets, or did we share them? What about our Bible knowledge? Do you know what? It's a real treasure. I know that you have that treasure. I know that's where I got my treasure from. You're going to keep it? Or do you want to share it with a hungry generation? Wouldn't it be exciting just to share it with everybody? So they actually want to know about the Bible. Yesterday, the Hindu girl, she really wanted to know. She wanted to know, why did Jesus die? I had to explain it quite a few times. To explain again why Jesus died. How exciting. I want to know the Bible. My little Bible study group, my girls' Bible study group, they're so excited. You know, when you read the Christmas story, it was hilarious. I had another friend with me helping, and I said, can you pray before we read the Bible? So she prays and says, oh, Lord, please help us. I know we've read this passage 1,000 times, but please speak to us. I'm like, no, I haven't read it before. And the girl next to me going, wow, I never knew that. Wow, I've never read this before. She never read the Christmas story, let alone the rest of the Bible. She hadn't even read the Christmas story, didn't have a clue. And so we have this extraordinary, so I'm very, very excited about the next generation's hunger. And I'll be really gutsily honest, I am slightly overwhelmed by the job we have to do. Because a secular individual over here is so far from a follower of Jesus Christ over here. Now, so it's the work of the Spirit, but it's also the work of parenthood in the faith. People need enormous amounts of parenting in the faith. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's not for the faint-hearted. And it's like, sometimes I feel I'll be really honest, I feel overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed by the people and what they need and how to resolve conflict or this issue or that issue, or I can't even begin. The task is the scale of it is enormous. We've been preaching through Corinthians, a bold series. We've been dealing with conflict, sexual morality, which was just huge. People haven't got a clue. Not being funny, they just haven't got a clue because no one ever told them. No one ever told them. So they're coming up for prayer ministry with Darren, can you just crazy things? I mean, crazy things. You and I'd be like, what? But they didn't know because no one ever told them. So the task of evangelism is a huge yes, but I want you to be sure you're ready for the task of discipleship. But whose life can you change in that next generation? Who will you walk with? And where will you find them? In Coventry, they're doing the doors with the Gospels, with an app. You mark if someone's in, and they're inviting people to Discovery Bible groups. Could you run one in the pub? Wetherspoons, they wanted chaplains in every Wetherspoons. We just couldn't provide them. Not enough people who want to go to Wetherspoons to talk to people about Jesus, unfortunately. But they had a few people doing it. They were so excited they wanted a chaplain in every Wetherspoons pub. So if you're up for that, go chat to Wetherspoons. Say that you could run a wellbeing series. Get it advertised. You'll soon have a group of people who want to read the Bible with you. I'm not joking. I genuinely. Find the places, the watering holes where people gather. Go there. See what God does. Let's tip it out. Knock on some doors, get a Bible table, go to the middle of the Cardiff, sing some songs, chat to some people. I don't mind what you do. There's real hope for the next generation, but a lot of that hope's sitting right here. So I want to know if you're up for it. Great, good. Shall we, if you're able, would you stand with me if you're able? We're going to flick to the next slide, just so you can see. We are aiming at 100,000 Gospels. We started aiming at 30,000 this year. We've smashed it and gone through. We're about 67,000 Gospels have been given out through Hope so far. We want to get to 100,000 this year, so you can join us in that challenge. Who would you like to give that to? But I want to pray, because I just believe in this room you have so much to give. You are exactly the people that we need. There's some amazing younger generation. You can reach your generation. You need to come and tell us what we need to do and what you need. What do you need to reach your generation? Because I know this group will back you. What do you need? What is it? What can you dream of and pray for together that you will reach that next generation, your generation for Jesus? And we'll back you all the way. We'll back you all the way. Say what it is that you need. Shout it out. Call it, find the people that you know and ask for it. If you need to ask for the moon, we'll try and get it for you, won't we? And then the rest who aren't in that generation, you are so not ruled out. You are ruled in, because we need parents. Do you know how desperate we are for people who can just tell people how to live a good, Jesus-filled life? Make godly decisions. Make godly decisions. I'm going to pray. Father God, you love this rising generation who are hungry and harassed and helpless. And before my eyes is an army of extraordinary, wonderful people. And so many of them are just inside their hearts, they're saying, yes. They're saying, yes, Jesus, deploy me. Where can I go? Where do you want to put me? Would you speak, Jesus, right now to people's hearts and minds with vision, with dream, with something, with that niggle that you've had of something that you could do, that niggle, turn that niggle into reality and see what Jesus will do behind that niggle. See what Jesus will do behind that niggle. Be it that you've got to reopen a youth club. Be it that you've got to take that youth club somewhere else. Or you're going to Wetherspoons to run a Bible study. Just be there every week reading your Bible. Someone will come and talk to you. Be that you're going to adopt a bench. You know what? If there's a bench near you that people sit on it, adopt it, sit there for Jesus. It's just like a well. And you know who Jesus met at the well. He'll use you. He'll use you. He'll use you. Jesus, I pray. We want to be your people. We want to lead others to know you. We want to be in on what you're doing. We want to be in. We want that yes to be us. Holy Spirit, we need your anointing and your help. You came when your people were waiting in Jerusalem. You came and you empowered ordinary men and women to be extraordinary with the good news of Jesus. You empowered them to be extraordinary with the good news of Jesus. Would you empower this room to be extraordinary with the good news of Jesus? The wealth that we have, we give it away, Jesus. That wealth of knowledge, that wealth of how to follow and live a good life with Jesus. And Jesus, we want to walk into eternity going, look, there's that person. The only thing you can take into the throne room of God is the people that you bring with you, that you've brought to faith and brought and discipled up in the faith. So come. Lord, I pray now for each and every person in this room. For each and every person in this room. Come. Lord, I want you to do more than we can ever imagine or dream. Do more than we can imagine or dream. God says, you put the dream out there, he'll match you and go further. You put the dream out there, he'll match you and go further. And some of you who are younger, you've got a longer race to run, but you can do great things for Jesus. He's calling you. There's a whole generation that needs you to be bolder than you've ever been, louder than you've ever been, clearer than you've ever been. You need to say that, yes, I'm all in. That, yes, I'm all in. And I've just got that, do you remember C.T. Some of you, you'll all know C.T. Studd. He was a great cricket player at the top of his game, literally, world class. He'd had every type of worldly privilege in the world. And he gave it all up to take the good news of Jesus to China. We don't need to go to China. We actually now need the mission here. But Jesus is asking, are you all in? Are you all in? That's everything. Are we all in? That's everything. That's what he wants to know. So just that yes to surrender, we're all in. Jesus, we're all in. And I pray for the stories that we'll hear, for the lives that will be changed, for what you're going to do. In Jesus' name, amen.